Alright, so what we have here today is the BetaFPV ExpressLRS Gemini system. So what we have in the box here is the SuperG, and this is the transmitter with Gemini built in, and also we have the SuperD RX, which is the receiver that has Gemini. So what this system allows is connection of using ExpressLRS with the new Gemini mode. And when I say new, it's actually not that new. It's the latest, I guess, in the improvements of what they've been putting in. The devs, that is. And BetaFPV has come out with this transmitter and receiver, and it allows you to then put it into a controller like this that I have here, which is a Jumper T-Lite, that then allows for the Gemini or True Diversity connection. So Gemini is basically True Diversity, which has on the transmitter two transmitters within one module, and on the receiver side two receivers that then combine the signals together so that you get a really good connection on your quad. So in this video, basically I'll be going through trying to, I guess, set this up onto the transmitter here, my controller, and then over here the SuperD, I'll install it onto this quad here, which is the later ones that I've built recently. You might have seen the videos. It's a SpeedyBee Bee35, and I'll be going through putting all this up and also configuring it, setting it up. I might have to put in the new Lua script as well into the controller so that I can set up the true Gemini mode on the receiver. So before I get into it, I just want to give a full disclosure that the products that you see here from BetaFPV was sent to me for free, and just wanted to be clear that they don't have any influence on what I actually show in here. I'm not showing them the video before I release it, and they haven't really said that I have to say anything positive or negative. I'm just giving my true opinions about what I think, and really I just want to install it and get playing around with it. So I'm going to give my honest opinions of what I think about using it and how it actually performs, and I'm not so much of a long range tester of any of these, and I think it's going to be pretty hard to actually test the long range ability of this system, but I'm just going to try it out, fly it around and see how it actually performs. So just to reiterate again, besides receiving these items for free from BetaFPV, I'm just going to give my full honest opinions. I'm just going to go straight into it and basically give you my thoughts. So with the disclosure out of the way, I'm NamFam, let's get into it. Okay, so over here I have my transmitter. This is a Jumper T-Lite, and I've used this for quite a while, and I've done a few videos on this, doing a few repairs on the sticks here and also the screen, but I'm going to use this here. I've done some repairs on the antenna as well here that did kind of snap off, so I've resoldered that. But what I'll do is take off this Jumper ELRS AION off, and this is just the module for ExpressLRS, and I'll be using this module here, putting it on. So basically I think it can work by just putting it on like this. Alright, so it's on like that, and these two red plastic covers can come off. And here are the antennas that I can put on now. Alright, so now the module, the SuperG, is now connected to the controller. I'm just going to position the antennas like this. Alright, so I'm going to try and fly like that, 90 degrees to each other, and I'll try and power it up. Alright, so it's all powering up okay, I think. Over here you can see the lights turn on. And with this I can go into the Lua script, and this is the Lua script that I had on the previous module that I had for the Jumper AION. But I believe I'm going to have to update that so that I can actually have some of the Gemini features built into the Lua script and configure it properly. But I can go in and use it the way it is now. I'm just going to jump in, go down to the ExpressLRS Lua script. Alright, so it's taking quite a bit of time, and I think the reason for that is that my controller here is the the T-Lite version 1, and it doesn't supply enough power to the module bay on the back, and I might need to actually power it with an external power. So I'll just put this down. What they've given in the package here is an adapter. Alright, so they're given this, and this is an adapter for USB-C with the XT30 on the end. I've got a 2S XT30 battery here, and I'm just going to plug this in. And I'm not sure what actually gets supplied on the USB-C plug here if I plug this in. So I'm not sure if it's straight power of, you know, the 7.6 volts out of this USB-C, but I'm going to test that out. I might plug it into my phone, see if it blows it up. But for now, I'm going to plug it into this module and see if it actually helps with this, because you can see it's actually trying to do something. But I'll turn it off. I'll plug this in and power back up the controller. Alright, so it's powered up now. We're just going to go back into the ExpressLRS. There you go. So immediately, given that the only change that I did was power it up properly, it's able to load up the Lua script for the controller like almost immediately. So given that this is a Gemini module, you can go down here to the antenna mode. I believe you've got antenna 1 there, antenna 2, you got switch, and I think there's a Gemini mode. Yes, so the Gemini mode's at the top. If I press up all the way, there's Gemini mode there, so I can select that, and that will set the transmitter into Gemini mode. And it will, I guess from a Gemini mode, it allows for the communication of both the antennas on, I think it's separate frequencies to the receiver. But right now, I don't have any receivers actually bound to it, but the transmitter is in Gemini mode. Alright, so when you're running this in Gemini mode, you'll see that there's 2 LEDs that light up for each of the antennas, but you can also run it in the individual antenna mode as well. So if you're only running it with a standard ExpressLRS, something like a Mobula 6 2024 here with ExpressLRS, then you can choose one of the antennas to use. So you can go into settings in the Lua script, go down to antenna mode, and you'll see you can change this to antenna 1, and when you do that, set it, just turning it around, you can see that antenna 1 is this one here, and it's lit up, and the other one turned off. Just to show you the other side as well, antenna 2, flipping it over, you can see antenna 2 is now lit up and antenna 1 is off. So you can also go down here to the TX power, and I believe the max power that this transmitter module goes up to is 1 watt. So I'm just going to see if I can go down to 1 watt, and there you go, I can set it to 1 watt. I have no way of actually testing this, but as I did that, I'm not sure if you could hear it at all, but I'll bring it up to the microphone, and that's the fan going. So as soon as I did that, it's gone quite warm already, and yeah, that's just to keep it cool because there's so much power being drawn out of it and pumping out of the antennas that it needs to then start the fan. So it's good. If you're placing this on the bench, just be careful because it actually blocks the fan. So I've noticed that I've started to do that. I can hear the fan struggling. So I'm going to have to hold it up like this just to keep the airflow going through. So just be aware of that. Don't keep this running while on the bench somewhere or out in the field and you place it on your bag. The fan will get blocked and you might burn something up. So just be wary of that. I'm going to turn this down now to 25 milliwatts, and hopefully that starts to cool down. Okay, so it's not much use in just using it like this. I'll need to bind it. So I'm just going to go to Wi-Fi connectivity here, clicking on that and enabling the Wi-Fi. That'll get the transmitter into Wi-Fi mode, and I can connect to it using my laptop and start binding it by using a bind phrase in there. So as I click on the Wi-Fi there, it goes up to Wi-Fi running. Alright, so on your computer, this is a Mac OS X, and you can use your Windows as well, but go into Wi-Fi settings and look for the Wi-Fi that's being broadcasted, which is ExpressLRS TX, which is the transmitter, and just connect to it. And once connected, you can go to, well, you don't have to, it actually opens up automatically here. You can see 10.0.0.1. You can also do the same thing on your browser here as well, so you don't have to do it in the window that opens up. But here I can actually see a lot more. So here we can go in and update the binding phrase. So there's already one that I've put in here, but I'll go and update it here. I'll put the one that I normally use here, and then go down and hit save. So here I'm just going to put it in. Okay, so once I've got the blind phrase that I want in there, I can go down and hit save. I can leave the rest here, they're pretty standard. I'm not going to change anything here. Go save and reboot. Alright, now hopefully that has saved, and we can go ahead and bind up any of our receivers and then start using it. Just to test it out, I've got other receivers like my Mobula 62024. I can start using that immediately since it has the same bind phrase. So this transmitter, the SuperG, will work with them or any other ExpressLRS receiver that you've already set up as well. Just one thing to note though, if you have receivers that are older versions of ExpressLRS like 2.0 and so forth, make sure that you do update them to the latest firmware or the firmware that is of major version number 3. So this is 3.3. So long as you have a version 3 on your receivers, then you should be able to use it with this transmitter. Alright, so back on the controller, I can exit the Wi-Fi mode, exit all the way out, and I'm just going to fire up my Mobula 6 2024 edition here, and then hopefully just connect them, and it automatically should. So I'll just plug it in. Just give it a couple of seconds. And there you go, it's already connected. You can see the bars there for the reception being received, and also then I can hopefully arm it. I've already got it all configured, so there you go. There you go, you can see that it works. I was able to do that quite easily, just plug it in like this and setting up Wi-Fi binding phrase, and there you go, it seems to work. Alright, so you're probably wondering, well, am I really going to be using this with the battery just dangling around here? It is a bit cumbersome, and I think other controllers that have a much higher output power to the module will work fine. I think the V2 has higher power output to the module. This is a T-Lite V1, so hopefully the better controllers out there, the boxes and every other one out there that are much more modern, more newer. This is I think a year and a half, maybe 2 years old now. This won't give enough power, so hopefully the newer ones do. But I'm going to be using this, so I'm just going to Velcro strap this to here. So I'm just going to grab some now. Alright, so there you go, that's my janky setup of where I'm going to be putting the battery. It's out of the way of my hands, I'm able to control it. Obviously, I'm only going to be using this module when I do have Gemini on the quad. And if I do have it on the quad, it might be one of these ones, so at least I have the option. And if I'm just flying casually with the Mob 7, I'll probably jump back over to using this Jumper AION module. But at least I do have this option here to have Gemini. One thing to remember when powering off the controller, always remember to unplug as well. I'm not sure if this is still powered when I have this plugged in, the XT30 to USB-C, so best to be sure, unplug it. I do notice that it's already gotten quite warm, and that's only on 25 milliwatts. So now that we have the transmitter all set up, let's jump over to the receiver, and this is the BetaFPV SuperD receiver, which is the Gemini one of course, and it has, you can see on this side, the two antenna UFLs there, and also the two antenna modules, the two receiver modules built onto the one PCB, and a bit of the power regulation and everything over here on this side. There's also a button over here as well, and I think that's the bind button. I'll put on the screen up here if it is or not. I'm not sure, but I'll be doing the binding using the passphrase or the binding phrase, so I'll go through that later. But for now, I'm going to solder it onto the quad that I want it on, and it's the SpeedyBee Bee35. Before I go on and actually solder it on, I just want to show you how I've mounted the antennas on the back here. So I've got them mounted in a plus configuration. hope you can see that there. There's this one here, which is vertically up and down, and this one is going horizontal. So that's just taking advantage of some of the antenna polarization effect, so that we can actually get the best reception from the transmitter. So I'm going to be mounting or positioning the antenna on the controllers so that one's up and one's horizontal, so vertical and horizontal, so it matches with this. It will give the best reception. So it was a bit hard. You can see it's a bit of a dodgy kind of way that I've got it here. I've cable tied this one up here, and it took me a while to work out the best way to do it so that I can actually pass through the wire. I'm not sure if you can see that there, but just back here, I'll just grab it here, you can see it. And it goes through into the inside of the quad there. On this side, on the back, down here, it goes underneath and into the TPU mount here and into the same area of where the VTX and the flight controller sit. So just so you can see, I'll turn it around. Hopefully that's a bit clear there. And you can see it pass through here, and there's the two ends of the antenna with the UFL connectors. So I'm going to be mounting it on in here and then stuffing it in here, trying to find a little gap that it will fit. Probably double-sided tape in there as well. And of course we'll have to solder this on. So I've cut off the EP2 receiver, and it's here, right here, and I've just basically snipped it right off so I can get to the wires. And on this flight controller, I've got it on UART6, so the T6 and the R6, and I will be wiring it up. So I'm just going to solder this up here. I'm not sure if you can see that there. So those are the points there on the SpeedyBee F405 Mini. So it's on the T6 R6, and I'll solder that up and we'll get onto it right now. Okay, so they're tinned up now, and over here on the receiver, I might tin them up on the back side here where the antenna side is. So luckily on this receiver here, it does have the labels on there. So you got RX, TX, 5 volt and the ground. So I'm just going to put it on a bit of blue tack there so it holds it down, and I'm just going to tin them up now. Okay, so now that I have the wires tinned up and also the receiver tinned up, I can start soldering them on, and I might need to use some helping hands here. So I'm just going to hold the receiver on one side and get them over here like this. And I'll do the 5 volt and the ground first because I know which ones they are, and then I'll check the wires on the flight controller and see which one the T6 is and the R6 is. So doing the ground, and then the 5 volt. Okay, so I can see that the T6 is the grey one, which will go to the RX, and the R6 is the yellow one, and it goes to the TX. So this is the T6 on the flight controller, and I'll put that to the RX, and then the R6 to the TX on the receiver. Okay, I'm just going to visually inspect that off camera, and we'll proceed to the next step. Alright, so now that everything's wired up, I'm just going to clip on the antennas onto the back of the receiver here, and also it does come with heat shrink. I've lost it now. So in the packaging it has the heat shrink. Alright, so I'll put this on afterwards, but I'll clip on the antenna first. Alright, so hopefully you can see that there. I've got the wires soldered up, and also I've got the antennas plugged in or clipped on, and I'll put the heat shrink on now. Okay, so we have the receiver all done up with the heat shrink, and we can tuck it inside. So it's a bit fiddly, and I'll try and sneak it in there and squeeze it down. I'll probably grab some double-sided tape first. Okay, now I've tucked it in there. You might be able to see it in there. down here, and I've double-sided taped it to the inside of the frame here of the whoop guard. Alright, now that's all in there, I can button this up. Okay, so since I've just installed a new receiver to this quad, I'm going to take off the props just to be safe. I'm not sure what the signals are going to be sent to the flight controller, so best to be sure, I'm just going to take them all off. Right, now that I do have a new component in this quad, I like to use the V-Fly short saver just to prevent anything going wrong if I did solder up anything incorrectly. So let's just try that out and see if it boots up fine. Okay, I've got it plugged in now, ready to fire up. 1, 2, 3. Alright, so it seems like it started up fine. All the tones were fine there. And also just checking around, I can see the lights on the flight controller and also the receiver in there as well. Might be a bit hard, actually, you can see it through there. So there's a receiver, it's actually blinking and you can see it, hopefully. And so we're good. So the way that I'm going to bind to this receiver is using the bind phrase, and I've powered up the flight controller using USB-C, plugging it into the back. Since I've wired it up to the correct pad for power, the 4.5 volt on the flight controller, it's going to power up using USB, and right now I've waited 60 seconds. So by default, the ExpressLRS receiver was set up so that it has a 60-second timeout that goes into Wi-Fi mode so that I can actually connect to it using the Wi-Fi. So right now it actually is pulsing a green LED, and it's a slow pulse, and you can see here it's broadcasting an ExpressLRS RX Wi-Fi network, so I can connect to it. And just like the transmitter where it did the same thing, it will pop up this screen here, but I might not use it. I can still connect to this, to the 10.0.0.1, just to give me a bigger screen. So I'll go 10.0.0.1, and then we're into the receiver. And so down here I can put in the bind phrase just like I did with the transmitter, and it should bind to the controller. So I'm just going to punch it in here and then hit save. Okay, I've put that in now and I can hit save, reboot, and that should do it. That should now have set the binding phrase to the receiver. Alright, so I just want to test out whether or not the connection and everything is working now that I've got the bind phrase all set up, and the bind phrase on the controller should be all set up as well as I did before. So I'm going to power this up, and the controller's already powered up as well. Let's just see if it actually connects. There you go, it did connect with the bind phrase all set up, so it's perfect. And I just want to see if it actually will boot up and spin the motors as well, so I'm just going to arm it. There you go, so it works. Cool. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that we're in Gemini mode yet, and I thank Joshua Baldwin for this, because he actually made sure that in his video he explained to everyone that you have to set up the receiver to be in Gemini mode as well, not just the transmitter. So I'm just going to go in and check out the controls. I'll move this out of the way, and I'm just going to try and do this quickly. Actually, I might actually get a fan to run on the video transmitter, because I do have the O3 air unit in there and it's going to get quite hot. So I'm just going to put a fan underneath it. So apologies for the fan noise, but I'm going to need that. I'll leave that there. And on here, I'm going to go into the Lua script again. We'll go down to ExpressLRS. And hopefully I can go down. Right now, the antenna mode on the transmitter is on Gemini, but down the bottom here, I believe there's a setting for it. Not sure where it is. Okay, so down here it's got other devices. I'll enter into that, and down here I've connected to the BetaFPV, so BFPV SuperD, so it knows that I've connected to it. Clicking into that, it's going to load up the receiver settings. So we've got the RX mode, it's on diversity. I'm going to go in there. I'm just going to check what's in here. So see how I have to go over to Gemini. That will set the receiver to be in true Gemini mode, and that will be paired up with the Gemini mode of the transmitter. So I'll set that. Now that's all saved, I can go back out. I'm just gonna quit all the way, and I think that's it. Basically, I'm in Gemini mode. So there we go, it's all set up. I'm not sure how to actually test out that it's actually in Gemini mode. The only way that I can really tell that is the transmitter is on like that. And yeah, I think that's also just doing a final test just to make sure that after setting that it was still all good. I'll move this over here, leave that there, and I'm gonna arm it. There you go, so it's all arming fine and it's all set up. So there you go, I've got Gemini all set up here. I'll put on the props again and then I'll go and do it, maybe a test flight, fly around and see if I can get this to, I'm not going to be able to actually test out the, I guess, how well Gemini works. Gemini works best, I guess, in situations where there's a lot of signals being fired around, and that's usually around like races where you have many other pilots flying around with their controllers and everything, and there's a lot of signals around that might interfere. That's one of the scenarios that it actually benefits in, and I'm not really a racer. I don't go around racing, so I'm not going to take advantage of that. In terms of long range, Bardwell says that it does benefit a little bit in the long range, so if one antenna is going to miss out on the signal, then hopefully the next one is going to, and it just pushes that limit just a little bit further. It's just also a peace of mind as well, so if you're flying around and there's a lot of mobile phones being used, like in crowded areas. Again, I don't really fly around crowded areas. I like to fly kind of by myself in, you know, open spaces and everything. So it really is just redundancy, and I hopefully that actually helps me out. But we all know ExpressLRS is a really good connection between the transmitter and the receiver. So this is just that extra redundancy and safety. In terms of packet rate, I'm going to leave it at 500 Hertz. You can go up to the D as well, so the Deja Vu Diversity Aid, D500 and D250. That increases your chances of getting packets through because Deja Vu does the extra packets that are sent. So with Gemini, given that you have two of the transmitters on board and the two receivers on the quad itself, you're going to double up on those packets as well that are being sent from both of those transmitters and receivers. So just an example, if you're using D500 in a normal ExpressLRS, you're going to get 2 repeat packets on 2 different frequencies, but when you're using D500 with the Gemini, you're going to get 4 packets sent across on 4 different frequencies. But for me, I'm not a racer, I'm not going to be flying in high interference areas, so I'm just going to keep it with the 500 Hz standard for the Gemini mode, and that will give me at least a longer range than the D modes. One other thing to note when you're using a Gemini transmitter is that if you're going to be using it with a single ExpressLRS receiver, like an EP2 Happy model, or the Radio Master ones, then you're going to get the noise generated from the second transmitter. So it's best to go into the antenna mode and switch it to one of the antennas, so ANT1 or ANT2, and that will allow for only one of the transmitters to be working at any given time, and that will reduce the amount of interference that you're going to get from the other transmitter. You can also use a SuperD receiver that's in the quad here with a single transmitter as well, so a standard transmitter, for instance like one of these here, but only one of the modules on the receiver will be active that will be paired with the transmitter. So it will still work, you don't have any issues with that, it will just divert back to the standard ExpressLRS protocol. So there you have it, the SuperG and SuperD from BetaFPV. I'd like to thank them once again for the opportunity, and I hope that you learned something or found it interesting. So if you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below and I'll do my best to get to them. That's all for this one, I'll see you in the next video. Cheers. I wonder what would happen if I plug this into my phone. So as you saw, I just plugged in a 2S USB-C into my phone here, and it doesn't blow it up yet. It seems like the light is still showing up here, but this is just a bit of a gag. This is actually a throwaway phone that I have, so it doesn't work anymore. The screen's busted. You can see here, it was actually from someone else, It's not my actual phone, but yeah, I just thought I'd test it out and see what would happen. I think the power delivery system in here actually prevents any of the extra power shorting anything, so phones these days, I think they're modern enough to detect that and stop bad things from happening. But having said that, don't try this at home, don't do it yourself. I just did it because I do have this device that is not usable anymore, and I'm going to throw it away anyway. It's going to be disposed of. So anyhow, that's what would happen. It's not going to blow up or anything, I hope, but I will unplug it and probably drop this into an ammo box just to be sure. Cheers.